assisted living. I'm Karena Stipp. And I am a senior specialist realtor. So this whole series I sponsor, and we have different guest speakers each month. So today we're going to welcome Tammy Robbins. No, it's still not going to work. There we go. Okay, so let me let Tammy step up. Tammy's from Cadence, Wake Forest, which is an assisted living, and it's just tucked right behind Rogers Road. So I'll let you take it away, Tammy. Tell a little bit about yourself.
First of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me here. Yes, I do represent Cadence Senior Living. We're an assisted living and memory care community. However, as much as I love my building, I'm here today to talk with you, ask questions, answer questions, and educate you about assisted living and memory care. So I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to try to move you into the building. We're not leaving to go move in. I really am a strong advocate for education. So I may mention Cadence occasionally, just in reference for examples, but truly I'm here to answer your questions and just have a dialogue about what we're doing in assisted living and memory care. Good deal.
Okay, so starting out, I think it's important to understand there's a lot of choices, and this is kind of the menu of all of the different types of senior living community, places that you can live. So starting with independent living, and there's no license required. Now, some may have a special certification, and they lean a little into the assisted living space. But independent living is just what it sounds like. You move in, right?
It is independent living. So you are responsible for getting yourself up in the morning, getting yourself dressed, getting yourself to breakfast, lunch, dinner, activities. The example that I give is it is a great transition from home of 30 years to maybe one day moving into assisted living or memory care. So if you want to stay at home and skip independent living and go straight into assisted or memory, that's an option. The other option is to leave home and go into independent living, knowing that you will need to provide most of your services yourself or your family help you. However, with that said, the beauty of independent living is they do have companies that are housed in independent living who will actually come in for 15, 20, 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes to help with bathing, dressing, making sure that you are taking your medications. There's very, very important differences though. So with medications, they cannot give you the medication. They have to just make sure that you're taking it out of your pill box. If you fall at independent living, they're not allowed to pick you up and help you, whereas in assisted living and memory care, we have folks who are trained to assess and help you in that situation. So there's very, very important differences that when I sit down with families, I like to go over those similarities and those differences, and then the family makes a decision as to what is best for them.
And that's why there's licensure required, starting with the assisted living level and going through memory care, skilled nursing, rehabilitation. Obviously, there's going to be lifting or helping.
What does that mean, required license?
The state will require licensure, which means it's someone who, so it requires the licensure for someone who is trained and educated for that specific scenario, depending on the level of care needed. And then when you get to life care plan or continuing care retirement, it's the same thing. Those communities will start at independent and then they'll transition. We've had other seminars about that, but that you'll live on a campus, which may be a huge high rise that has all of these things within that building, or it may be a sprawling campus of acres and acres like Springmore. But either one, it will have everything housed on that campus. So you'll start out independent, it will have assisted living, there will be rehab there. So if you go have your knee replaced, you go to the hospital and then come back, you go into rehab and then go back to your apartment independent afterward. And there's also skilled nursing, end-of-life care, all of that is available.
So if you're independent and then all of a sudden you need assisted living, you can just...
You move to a different part of the building or campus, yes. And sometimes people will get better I mean, there are cases where sometimes they'll, you have maybe surgery, you need to have a little more care.
Yeah.
And so you may slide around. It's kind of a chessboard, right? Where you may go over from rehab to assisted for a short period of time, and then you still go back to your regular apartment or unit, whatever that may be. Some of them are freestanding homes, depending on the life care community. Okay, does that make sense?
And again, while we're there, every single place that's listed on this slide has its pros and cons. Even my building, pros and cons, because with a continuing care retirement community, which is what y'all are discussing right at this moment, in some cases, there's a buy-in. There might be a $300,000 buy-in.
More.
True. The other day I heard $300,000 for one place, but yeah, there's some more, there's higher end places. And you have to buy in. We don't have that. So that's another huge difference. That works beautifully for some people who invest in that, and they can live, like you said, at the cottages or in the houses. So they start there at a younger age, and then they progress through the system. But that is an investment. Now there's some CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities, where you don't have that buy-in, but the monthly fee is higher. So you cannot compare apples to apples. It's just impossible.
In fact, I've been shopping, looking at different, I was to one in Richmond, one in Greensboro, I was to Springmore, and also, the Lodge up on whatever, you know.
Okay, yeah,
So I'm in the big, do I stay or do I go? So I'm getting all this information, and every community is different. Even the life care communities, you think, well, you buy in, you select your apartment, and of course what we all want is, just all of them will have what they call a benevolent fund. You run out of money to keep you.
Yes, they do. So those continuing care, life plan communities, they promise to care for you for life, in most cases.
But
even if your money runs out.
Yeah, you have to be sure to pin down what it is they'll do for you in the meantime. And if you jump between your apartment and assisted living, my son is going through this with his mother-in-law now. Her long-term care insurance has been paid for her in assisted living, and she just got denied. While she's been there for over a year because she had a serious brain surgery and everything, and she still needs help, but they're saying, well, she can dress herself if she takes time, and she can. But her long-term care insurance evaluates her almost every month. The community she lives in has to send a report of which they think she can do, or she can live independently, or she needs assisted living. And my son and his wife, they're trying to appeal this. They want her, since they need that money to keep her where she is. Yeah. But the community, for some reason, is saying, oh, she can do these things. We don't need to take care of her that much anymore. So while she was living on her insurance for 2 years, now they want to take her.
And it's important to understand, all long-term care policies are different. They have different spin down, they'll call it. So some of them will start with 0 days of spin down, meaning that immediately it'll lock in once you're approved. Some have a 30-day, some have a 90-day. Some have adjusted over the years, so your loved one may remember that they had a 0 spin down and now they have a 90 because they didn't want to pay that much because the prices went up. So you really have to do a lot of digging if you have a long-term care policy. And it won't lock in until you need help with activities of daily living, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But it will work for a life care plan community or a continuing care or anything licensure required. It will work for that. And even sometimes independent living, if someone's living in an independent living community and they need just some help and that policy will pay for it, they'll pay for someone to come into their unit. As Tammy mentioned, sometimes they're in the building, you can have extra help come in, that's your choice, it's a different company. So those are all options, but you really have to do your homework if there's a long-term care policy involved to see what it will and won't do.
And every community is different, life care communities. 3 out of 10.
They are. I just made a call for a client the other day. Her kids are leaning heavily on her about where they think she should land. And we've toured some places here locally. And whoops, that's never done that. The sign just popped, it's okay. And so when I made the phone call, this was a continuing care retirement community, and rather than calling it a buy-in, they called it an ownership model, but it really is a buy-in. But this is in West Virginia. And so the terminology in my mind was probably better, something that appeals more to that local community, because they feel like they have ownership, even though really they're just going to transition. It's no different than, yeah. So that's, know that they may use different terminology, they may have a different way of doing things whenever you're looking at continuing care retirement communities. And if it's something that you're highly considering, let's say you've narrowed it down to 1 or 2 places, ask for copies of their contracts and talk to an elder care attorney and have them look it over.
I just wanted to add about the independent living. Make sure before you sign your lease that you know what the exit strategy is. For example, my mom's, it's only 30 days. If she has to go to assisted living, they'll only take 30 days notice, that she has to pay the rent there for and
Right.
then get out of the lease.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to pay the rest of the year for the lease.
Yeah. Many of them are month to month.
That's good.
But there are some that do have a lease that you're signing that's a longer term, like a year.
But even with her year lease, she can get out in 30 days if she needs.
Right. Independent living is usually 30 days. Assisted living is actually 2 weeks, typically.
Okay, and so what are the requirements to qualify to live in an assisted living community?
Great question, and this is what I really wanted us to focus on today. So people, and I'm noticing with your questions and your comments, there's a lot of confusion out there about what the different levels of care are and what each community offers. So just focusing on assisted living, okay? Let me back up. Actually, independent living, like I said, you can live there, you can hire someone to come in and help. It's almost like your home, okay? In assisted living, we have 24-hour caregivers. So we are there to assist someone if they're relatively independent, all the way through if they're maybe wheelchair bound and they need extensive hands-on assistance. So there's a broad spectrum of what we can do in assisted living and memory care to care for someone. And that's not just in my community, that's all over the area. Assisted living, by definition, is we can do as little or as much help as you need. My building, the requirement is that someone at least be able to bear weight. Now, it may not be pretty, it may not look good, but if they're wheelchair bound, that is fine. That is fine. At my community, that is fine. As long as my caregiver can help them get up out of the wheelchair and kind of shimmy over or pivot over to a bed or to another chair. So that is kind of the other end of the spectrum for us. But again, everything in between, all the way to the beginning, someone can be very independent. I will go ahead and talk about the difference between,
Activities of daily living is the next one, I think.
Okay.
It's not clicking for me.
Okay.
I figured you were getting to that,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
let me, even though I'm having to manually.
no,
there you
that's
go.
fine. So you hear this term all the time, activities of daily living. And you hear that with the long-term care policies. You'll see that term all the time. Most of the long-term care policies, if you have one or your loved one has one, they require assistance with 2 to 3 of your activities of daily living. What does that mean? It means showering, bathing, helping in the shower. Now that can mean a range. Again, just in that category, you've got a range of assistance. So it might just be what we call a standby. Somebody has had a couple of falls, they're unsure of getting in the shower. So my care staff is going to go in, make sure they get in the shower safely, and then we hands off. We are hands off. They can shower themselves, they take care of their needs, and then we go back in to make sure that they get out of the shower safely. Or we can go all the way to we are getting them in the shower, we are bathing them from head to toe, we're washing hair, we're doing everything. So even within each activity of daily living, there's a range, there's a spectrum of different types of care. So bathing, dressing, and dressing's the same way. We might help somebody who's relatively independent just button their blouse. They just can't get it quite buttoned. or they can't get their bra on, or they can't get their shoes on. But we don't have to do the entire dressing, or maybe we do. So somebody could move into assisted living needing very little help, and then we grow with them. I call it graduating, or we grow with them into needing more hands-on care. Getting in and out of bed, walking. So someone can come into assisted living with no assisted device at all. Just like you walked in, just no canes, no wheelchair, no walker, nothing. And then again, we can grow with them and they can become wheelchair bound. Or somebody can move in needing a wheelchair right away. Again, it's a broad spectrum. Using the toilet, of course we help everyone with all of their toileting needs as needed. If someone is incontinent, I get this quite often. If someone is incontinent, whether it be bowel, bladder, both, they can be in assisted living. There's something out there in the world, I don't know where this has come from, that people think that if you are incontinent, you have to be in memory care or skilled nursing care. Let me tell you now, help me spread the word, that is not true, okay? You can walk into my building wearing pads, depends, having accidents, and we're there to help you. And of course, eating. Now, in my building, we can offer certain types of diets, so it can be a chopped diet. So if we serve a chicken breast, we may chop it up for you. We have softer foods that we can offer. But if we're going to do what I call hand to mouth, then that is a memory care skilled need. So we would move you into our memory care area if someone has dementia. If they don't have dementia, then we would probably look at a skilled level service.
So your assisted living place offers meals?
Yes.
How many meals?
3. So this goes back to that licensure thing. So all assisted living is going to offer 3 meals a day, 3 snacks a day. Independent living is not. That's where you get the confusion between independent living and assisted living. Now I'm going to jump on my soapbox for 2 seconds. Okay? Bear with me. When you're talking to someone like me, and I'm throwing myself, you have to be able to trust that person and make sure that they're not selling you on something. Because their job, always keep in mind, I'm going to say their job because it's not my job. Their job, it's kind of my job, but their job is to fill a building with residents. And if you get someone who is not working from the heart and is not educating you about the differences and is not showing you where you might be a better fit, please walk out of that place. This is not a sales job. It is not. It is an education job. It is helping the family find the right place. I can't tell you the number of families who come to me, they're looking for independent living. I send them down the street to the Lodge, to the Gardens of Wakefield, to Atria. I do it every week of my life. I don't want someone to live in assisted living or memory care if you don't need it. So if you want to call me and start with me, I can answer questions just like that, and I can tell you which way to go. So can you. Yes, I mean, we know the questions to ask and answer, and you just pepper us, and we will help guide you. So, lady in the purple who's been asking the great questions, if you came to me today and said, I think I'm interested in assisted living, I said, I don't think you are. Let's go down to this place over here.
I know I'm not.
You know that.
But I just want to, I'm really going between, I can do it independently, I've done it for several years now. But just to be good to my family, I'm looking in, thankfully, getting into long-term care community. I'm glad I have the wherewithal to do that if I want.
Right.
Because you move there and you don't have to live together.
That's right.
You can go from independent living to assisted living to memory care,
And that is an advantage to a CCRC, but some people cannot do that. So what typically we have in Wake County, we don't have very many CCRCs in Wake County. I think there's
There's 9 in the area.
There's 9,
Yeah.
okay.
Can you
Including
say
Durham or
what's
just
the-
Wake County?
No, just wait.
Just
yeah.
Wake County?
Can you say what it stands for again, CCRC?
Continuing Care Retirement Community. Gosh, I had a.
And they're also referred to interchangeably as Life Plan Community. So it means the same thing.
Life plan? Okay.
Life
But
Plan.
some people cannot go that route for financial reasons, for location. I mean, there's not one in the Wake Forest, Youngsville, Rollsville
No,
area.
there's not.
So there's a lot of factors that go into making that decision. So some people will move from, like I said at the beginning, from their home into independent living, knowing that they may stay there forever and ever. And if you can stay at independent living, like at the Gardens of Wakefield, the Lodge, Atria, if you can stay at those places forever and ever, yay, that is awesome. But there comes a time when some people need specialized assisted living and memory care. Here's the other thing, and again, I love CCRCs. I will promote them when I can, but I also have to let you know that you cannot be an expert in all areas. You cannot be an expert in independent, assisted memory care and skilled care. This is my opinion. This is Tammy Robbins' opinion. This is what I've seen working with clients. I'm looking at moving someone right now from a CCRC memory care over to my memory care, because that memory care is not offering the services that the family needs. So it's just my opinion. That's why you asked me here. And I can talk with you later, individually about that. But at this point, these are the activities of daily living. This is what we can handle at assisted living and memory care.
Excuse me, Tammy, are all the CCRCs something that you have to buy in? You have to give, is this the one with the $300,000 or are all CCRCs something that you have to buy into and give them?
Typically you do. There are a couple that you don't, and they actually have a little bit higher monthly fee.
Okay.
Okay, and the other thing I found, since I've visited 3 of these communities, Richmond, Greensboro, and here, they operate in 2 different ways. The buy-in can be a little bit less, but then it's like fee for service.
That's right.
That's
You get a
right.
meal allowance.
Right.
What I liked about this one place I visited, I think it was Avery and Richmond, they give you a $450 a month allowance for food.
Right.
But if you go and you're buying your food at their dining and grill, I mean, you can go in, but I found out that $450, it sounds like a lot. But when you go to the grill and a flatbread and a Coke is $15, that's a daily meal.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want a full dinner, a salmon dinner with all the trimmings, which I love, that's $26. That's a 2-day allowance on your food, because at $450, that's, $15 a day for a month.
Right.
I mean, you have to watch what you're buying into, because they'll have 3, actually, they don't even serve breakfast. Right.
That's one of the major differences that I was referring to, the meal plan, the meals. But since I'm here to talk about assisted living and memory care, let's go back to that. But between the 2 of us, we could probably talk all day about all these different options, so.
So what are levels of care in assisted living and how do they differ in price and services?
Okay, this is where it's very difficult between, now, okay, let's switch our brains for a second. Now we are only talking about assisted living and memory care buildings, freestanding. So here in Wake Forest, it's Cadence, and it's Brookdale, right across from the library. So there's 2. And when you go kind of into North Raleigh, you've got Falls River, you have Terabella, you have my sister property, Cadence, in North Raleigh. So you have multiple choices, but what you're gonna see is assisted living on one side, memory care on the other. So the services in my building, I just wanna speak to mine, most of the time, I'll say in most of the buildings, we have levels of care. So you're gonna have a base rate, for lack of a better term, room and board. That's all of your meals, your laundry, your housekeeping, your activities, your transportation to different events and doctor's appointments. So all of these things are, again, room and board. Then you're gonna have a level of care. So how we figure that out at my building is my nurse will actually go out and do an assessment on your loved one. and ask lots of questions about the ADLs, the activities of daily living. So how much time will we be spending with dressing, bathing, toileting, transfers in a wheelchair, or transfers with a walker, helping someone walk with a walker, eating? How much time are we going to spend with that person? In my building, we give points to that. So let's go back to the example I was sharing about showers. If someone is relatively independent with their shower, they just need a reminder, they need a standby. So you might have an aunt or an uncle or someone in your family who is forgetting to shower. And you go visit and you're like, he has not showered in 3 days. What is going on? So in that case, he would move in with us and we might just do reminders. So that's going to be maybe 15, 20 points. Whereas we also might move someone in at this end of the spectrum where they are in a wheelchair, we are going to wheel them to the shower, we are going to lift them, we're going to place them on the bench, we're going to do the head to toe bathing like I mentioned earlier. That person may have 75 points. So by the time we get through with the assessment, we've gone through all of these categories or all of these activities of daily living, we go back to that term, and at the end of that assessment, there'll be a point value. If that person is, I think it's like 125 points, they're a level 1. That is $660 per month. Okay?
On top of the base
On
rate.
top of the base rate. So you add the room and board, which in my building is around $4,174, and a studio. We'll talk about pricing a little bit later. But that's just your base rate. Then you add to that the level of care. So you're looking at, around $5,000 per month. You can have a level 1 care. Now, if someone needs a little more assistance, or maybe that person is on oxygen. I have a lady who uses her rollator, and she is on oxygen, but she takes care of her bathing, her dressing. She takes care of all that. She's 0 points in all these different categories, but she's on oxygen. Well, that is a little more care for my staff to offer to her to make sure that her oxygen is being used properly. So we are going to assign points to that. So she might be a level 2 because of oxygen, whereas you might be a level 2 because you're not on oxygen, you're not diabetic, but you need help with bathing, dressing, and toileting. That make sense?
Yes.
Okay. But the nurse does all that assessing.
And then,
So, since you're doing the pricing, a level 1 care is 12 points, and you said that's about how much, level 1, was Cadence?
Cadence is $660.
And that's a month?
And I can, if y'all want to contact me, there are business cards right here. It has my cell number on it. It has my email. I didn't bring any pricing sheets today, but if you want to, I didn't want to sell you on something. I didn't want you to think I was selling you on something. But if you want to just send me a quick email or a phone call, I will send you the pricing sheets. I'm not one of those folks that keeps it secret. You'll call some places and ask for the pricing sheet. They won't give it to you. You're shaking your head. You've been down that path before. You can have it. You have it. I want you to be able to see, what our levels of care are and what the costs are.
so average monthly cost, what would that be for an assisted living unit?
So at Cadence, we have 3 different types of rooms, and those rooms range anywhere from, I'm just going to round it up, $4,200 a month, all the way to about $8,000 a month.
Okay.
So you have to think about your room. The close to $8,000 a month, that is like an apartment. That's like a 2-room. It's huge. I only have 4 in the building. That is not typical when you move into assisted living. I have to be honest. Most people are not going to need that much room. They go more for a studio or a studio with a kitchenette.
And they're
So,
private?
All are private. Assisted living is all private. So then you take, if you had to force me to say an average, I would say between $6,000 and $7,000 a month. And that is a hard pill to swallow. When you think, we don't have mortgages that high. We don't, there's nothing that we've invested in that costs that much per month. That is a lot of money, and so it's a scary thought, but I think we're gonna talk about paying for it in just a
And
minute.
that includes the 3 meals and the 3 snacks a day,
Mhm.
but no any kind of services, like the person is someone independent.
Well, in that average, I
Oh,
included,
you included some
yeah,
level-
because she asked me an
level-
average, so I
Okay.
said, 6 to 7,000, that's gonna be a level 1, level 2 type
Okay.
care.
Okay. So does Medicare pay for assisted living?
No.
And is there any?
I know, I was reading the second question.
Is there any type of assistance to help pay for assisted living?
Okay, let's get it all out. Here we go. So Medicare does not pay for assisted living or memory care or independent living or CCRCs. What it does pay for, like in my building, therapies. So if you are in my building and you need physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, nursing care, like specialized nursing care, not the nursing care that my staff provides, but specialized, like a wound care, Medicare will pay for that. Medicare will pay for that, but it is all private pay across the board.
It's too late to look for long-term care insurance now, right? I mean, that's not going to benefit you personally at my age. They said just take the premiums and put it somewhere else.
Right, just invest that money.
Too
yeah.
late
Yeah.
at this point to
Right.
think of it.
The average age is like 55 for a long-term care policy, up to 60. You're probably gonna pay a little bit more at 60 just because you've already been diagnosed with a few ailments, but yes.
And it's like a nice car payment. It's like a luxury car payment. If you're in your 50s to 60-ish, that's how much you will pay for a long-term care policy. However, there are life insurance policies with a rider, so you have to have it written correctly, but the life insurance policies with a rider allow you, if you purchase one of those, let's say it's a $300,000 policy, okay? It's a dual, it kind of had dual citizenship is what okay? So what it does is, if you pass away, you've had this policy for a year, and you have a beneficiary, then the money just goes to the beneficiary. However, if you get sick and you need assistance, that rider allows you, with their stipulations, just like there are with ADLs, right? But the rider allows you to dip into that policy and use it to take care of yourself. Now, you may not leave anything to your beneficiary, but at least you didn't leave a stack of bills,
Right.
right? And you weren't, and you got the care you needed.
It's a great conversation to have with your financial planner or with
Yes.
someone who sells long-term care insurance. And again, we both can help you with that. Let's move on to, are there options to help pay? So first, I always ask if someone is a veteran. My building offers a 5% discount off of the base rate if someone is a veteran or the spouse of a veteran.
For any veteran, regardless of
Yes.
whether they served during wartime.
So, none of that, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So that's 5% off the base rate. Not every company offers that. So you just have to ask. The second option is if you're a veteran and you meet certain criteria, you can possibly qualify for a program called VA Aid and Attendance. So you might want to start doing a little reading about VA Aid and Attendance for those of you who are vets or who have family members who are. And again, it's also the spouse. So if you're looking at a place for mom or aunt, for yourself, if your husband has served and meets this certain criteria, but he's passed away, then you may qualify as a spouse. That is called VA Aid and Attendance.
And it can take a while to kick in, that once you qualify, but then they'll go back and retroactively give you the amount for that period of time. I have a couple of different ladies that are spouses of veterans who served during wartime, and they qualified for about $1,500 a month, each of them. One's in memory care, the other's working on assisted living.
But their tax return has to verify that they live, that they have only a certain amount of money. You have to have proof of that.
Right, you do, yeah. That's the certain criteria that I was talking about. We won't get into all that. We will go way down a rabbit hole if we get into all of that. But there are experts who I can refer you to, you probably can refer some folks to, that will actually walk you through the whole VA aid and attendance process.
My question was the same, is there a income requirement
to qualify for aid and attendance? I believe there is.
There is. So it's actually more of an asset requirement. What are your assets? And that changes from year to year, and I honestly don't know the latest number. The assets have actually increased, so you can have more money in the bank and still qualify for VA aid and attendance than you could 15 years ago when I started. So I'll stop for a second here. I'm not sure if it's on another slide, but what I encourage families to do is, number one, if you come to me and you are a married couple, I'm going to strongly encourage that you go and see an elder care attorney, because you want to protect your assets. If one spouse needs to go into assisted living or memory care, the other wants to stay at home. There's so many different things that need to take place, and there's a very, very detailed, complicated conversation that needs to happen. I know attorneys cost money. I know, I've used several. And I promise you it is worth every penny if you will go to an elder care attorney. Yes.
So the question for elder care attorney then is to preserve assets.
That's correct.
Mhm.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So you would sit down, even prior to you sitting down in front of that attorney, they will send you a pretty thick packet of information. They are asking everything about your assets and your income and just everything. They're trying to get a full picture of you, and do you own property? What state is it in? Everything. Do you have a will? Do you have a beneficiary? It's so many questions. But they are trying to guide you in the best plan for you in preserving assets. So there's lots of different things that they can do. So I'll go back to my original thought. When there's a couple, a husband and wife, I always have this conversation. Let's go talk to an elder care attorney. If you are single, I will still encourage you to go to an elder care attorney. One, if you need an updated will, if you need medical power of attorney, thank you, power of attorneys. So if you need those documents, depending on your asset situation, sometimes we can actually guide you a little bit. But if there's a complicated situation where there's land or houses or cars, all of that, then we definitely want you to go to an elder care attorney. There are some folks who are estate planners. I personally, again, this is a Tammy opinion, I personally like elder care attorneys. I feel like they have a better handle on the Medicaid situation. Should we go ahead and talk about Medicaid for 2 seconds? All right. You're really good. Yes. Okay. So Medicaid, as many of you know, is a federally funded program that can help people when they are in need of assistance, either through assisted living or memory care. I personally, again, this is a Tammy thing, I use the word Medicaid generically. I just say Medicaid. Everybody knows the word Medicaid. I did a presentation like this one time, and of course there was an attorney who corrected me and said, you really should be calling it special assistance. Okay, he was right. It is called special assistance, but most people don't know that term. So I'm educating you today, so you're not embarrassed like I was. If you hear special assistance, they're kind of sort of talking about Medicaid. Is that clear, first of all? We're good? Okay. I'm going to continue to say Medicaid because that's just what we all know. you're giving me a thumbs up. All right. So Medicaid, there is, the first question I will ask you, if you call me and say, hey, I'm interested in moving into Cadence, what's your monthly income? If you tell me your monthly income is $800, then I am going to start asking you questions about assets. I will ask you about a house. I will ask you about cars. I will ask you about land. I will do a little preliminary discussion with you, much like an elder care attorney. I am not an attorney, but I will start asking you some questions so that I can guide you in the right direction. Sometimes, just like you, we can answer those questions and help you figure out, number one, if you make below a certain amount, you may qualify for Medicaid special assistance if you don't have the assets that I'm referring to, the land, the houses, and so forth. So there's a possibility that I may not be able to move you into like my building or Brookdale or some of the other buildings around here because we don't take Medicaid. We don't take the Medicaid / special assistance. But I can guide you to buildings that do take Medicaid / special assistance. So I will ask you some personal questions. Everything you share with us is confidential, but I'm trying not to be nosy. I'm trying to get drilled down and get to the right spot for you. So if you call and say mom's on a limited budget, then we're gonna start down that financial conversation.
And some of those communities may have X number of beds that are private pay and X number of beds that are Medicaid. So even if they do accept Medicaid, there may be a waiting list, and you may have to shop around to find a place that has an opening, especially if it's urgent. So one of the things I always encourage people to do, the more you know, the more you can plan, and then you're not really scrambling as much, in certain cases.
Like as I'm looking around at this group now, there is nothing wrong with you coming in and talking with me or talking with you or doing what you're doing, going down to the lodge, talking with them, trying to get as much education as you can. I know you're not moving into Cadence next week. We're full anyway. You're not moving in, but you are educating yourself because we're not going to sit here in this big group and talk about your finances. But if you want to ask us questions, we will be glad to guide you through that conversation. I have worked with people, I've been doing this for 16 years. I have worked with people sometimes for 2 or 3 years before they make a final decision. Not typical, most of the time when you need assisted living or memory care, it's pretty urgent. But there is nothing wrong with you planning. There's nothing wrong with you sitting down with someone at an independent living place and then sitting down with me at an assisted memory care place to learn all about this Medicaid situation. But Medicaid, let's be really clear, Medicaid does not pay at all buildings. Okay? Some people think that. Yes, sir.
Is there such a thing as a revocable living trust?
Yes.
That an elder care attorney can do?
100%, yes.
Can that help pay, get you qualified for Medicare, Medicaid?
You know what, I'm gonna let an attorney answer that question. I would feel more confident if they would answer that question.
There's a revocable and irrevocable,
Right.
But you need to talk to an attorney about that.
Right.
Because we aren't attorneys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
And
to
see
be
what's
really
right for
honest
you.
with you, I'm talking to my dad right now about that, and I'm learning the differences and the pluses and the minuses. So I'm going to learn right along with you.
And if you're having power of attorney drawn up, just as a point of reference, I recently had this come up with a client. So there's a difference between a power of attorney and a durable power of attorney. So durable is what you would need if you wanted to survive. For instance, in the particular case where this client, we had a learning curve, he had a power of attorney. It was not durable, and his mother has gone into memory care. So he has now had to apply to the state for guardianship because she's too far gone to make the decision to sign over the rights to him. And fortunately, it's just his brother's passed away. There's no one else in the family that will contest it. But if you want to make sure you have the person you've selected in place, go to the elder care attorney, make sure that those documents are in place so that it's not being contested at the worst time ever.
So we want durable.
Durable power of attorney is the one you want because it will survive a memory, an issue where you become incapacitated.
And a bank's, I just went through this with my parents, a bank's beneficiary list, a bank will supersede your will. So make sure they're all lined up together.
If you have payroll debt.
Yeah, well, you have to have the same names and the same situation, it's got to all line up.
Well, and that's
Bank with
again
the
why
will.
you go to someone who specializes in this and they send you such a big pack of information because they're going to make sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed. So there is no, it just makes the whole process seamless. It's hard enough to lose someone you love. I mean, I just did this a year and a half ago with my mother, and my brother and I seamlessly worked together. We made decisions, together in a way that my mother would want and that honored her wishes. And one of the tools that she gave us to do that with was the fact that she had a trust and a will and she had her power of attorney. Everything was in place. And so it was hard enough for me to have to do some of it long distance because she was in the Midwest. My brother was close by, but I've always been the one in charge. You know. He's a nice guy and all, but I'm a girl and I'm older. So
I'm sure he was grateful that he had you involved.
I would imagine he was. It's funny when we went in just to make the final arrangements. Literally, the funeral director was asking the questions, and my brother knew nothing. He didn't know our grandparents, didn't know where they were born, none of it. And I said, "Where have you been?" So even those kinds of things, write those things down, because he would have felt probably really lost if I hadn't had all that memorized. And I've always kind of had it in my head, but it's those kinds of little things, and not that that's a have-to thing, but the death certificate requires some of that information. So those are the kinds of little bitty details. If you have all of that done, then it's literally a matter of execution on the part of your loved ones. And that makes it so much easier for them when it's already such a tough emotional time to live through. So next, okay.
I'm having a huge trouble trying to find an elder attorney. I started out with one, and it ended up, after I had already paid hundreds of dollars for just initial speaking with her, that to put the whole thing together was going to cost an additional $10,000.
It does.
Yeah, and no, it doesn't always.
I know.
And so I need, what I would love at some point is direction, and to names and whatever that I can do, and some kind of rename.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I knew you.
Yeah.
I will give you that name again. I'm not gonna share the name,
We're recording right
We're
now.
recording,
So
and
after the seminar, we can have independent conversations about specifics.
and here's the thing, we all, in my position, some of us are called community relations directors or sales and marketing, and I hate that sales part of it, but we have partnerships with people. We're not paid. I think I told you, I don't even get a cup of coffee from this, but we have folks who we trust. I'll do a plug for SING. There's an organization here in Wake Forest and North Raleigh, or Rollsville, Youngsville. It's called SING, Senior Information Networking Group. And we are a group of, probably 100 people now.
Yeah.
We're all professionals, somehow related to the industry of helping seniors. So we have attorneys in that group. Some of them are elder care attorneys, some are estate planners, and they all bring something to the table. We have a great relationship with some of those folks just because we know their work. This is very important to me. Again, this is another Tammy thing, okay? I trust you until I don't. And you and I had this conversation. I know exactly where you're coming from, and you probably need to go to a different attorney.
Oh, I
If you didn't already know that. I think you already knew that. So there are partnerships, not paid partnerships, but partnerships that's built on trust. And so when I give you the name of someone, it's because I have worked with them personally, or I've worked with them through my clients, just like you.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, if I've never worked with this person, whether it's a declutterer, or whether it is a move specialist, or a moving company, or an insurance agent, whoever it is, I will say to you, I haven't worked with this person. You're my guinea pig. Let me know how it goes. And that's how I build relationships in this town, and that's how we created SING. So SING, again, is 100 different people who in some way work with seniors, and we meet quarterly. We also do socials almost monthly now, I think. And we are getting to know each other. We're getting to know somebody's work ethic and their style, and if they work from the heart. You will hear me say that 100 times. You have to find people who work from the heart, and if you don't, then move along. You can smell somebody who's trying to sell you something, move along, because that person does not have your interest, they're not invested in your family. So when I get to know my families, I know where they live, I know mama, dad, and grandpa. I mean, it's amazing how small Wake Forest becomes. As much as we've grown, it's amazing how small it becomes when you really are invested in that particular family and trying to find the best place for them or the best resources. So always call us for resources. That's what we're here for too. I mean, yes, we would love for you to move into Cadence. Yes, we would love to sell you a house. So, you know, but that is not all that we do, and that's what has made us, I think, different.
Well, I think for me, when I have people ask for a recommendation, I try to use, when I have a need for my own home, for instance, then that would be who I recommend. If they've done work for me, then I trust in knowing that. And if I don't, if it's somebody that I just haven't had that work done or haven't had a client ask that question before, I'll reach out to a group of either Sync members or realtors that I trust and say, who do you have for this? And I will tell you when I recommend that person. I'm going to tell you I haven't used this person personally, but they came highly recommended to me from someone I trust. And I want to know feedback because I won't recommend them again if it's not something you're not completely happy with. So I always try to give that tagline so that you know that I really want to recommend the very best person to you. And I try to come from a place of personal experience, and if I don't have that, then I go to the next best, which is someone I trust that have asked that question. So what advice do you have for someone considering moving to an assisted living community, Tammy?
Okay, great question. So let's take it from a little bit different angle, then we'll get to that. Assisted living and memory care, there's two types of families I'm working with. One type is like you've got time, you can do your research, you might go over to independent living, you might visit a memory care, assisted living, you might visit a CCRC. You are doing your research. Start today. You're here at this class. Tomorrow, call me up, make an appointment. Next week, come on in. Just do your research. So that's one type of family that I'm working with. We've got plenty of time. Let's talk about things. Then we have the situation where something happened, whether it was a fall or a sickness or something. Maybe there's a daughter who lives out of town. They went to visit mom up in Richmond, Virginia, and they saw a mess. Mom's not eating, her house is in disarray, it's never been like that before, she's not showering, whatever the circumstances might be, something has happened. That's more of an immediate move. So if you've done your research over here, you already know, I know what to do, and you start implementing your plan. But if you haven't done that research, then you're the type of family that we need to do an immediate move. And that's the one where it's a little more complicated because a lot of us in Wake County right now are full. There has been such an increase in need that I know Brookdale is typically full, I'm typically full, we might have one room available here or there. So you have to get on these wait lists. I have people on my wait list who've been on there for 2 years, but they're on there just in case something happens. So that immediate move then throws everybody into a little bit of chaos because one, you may not be able to make a decision as to where your family places you. So the key here is you want to have input in where you're going. Otherwise, your son, daughter, they are going to come in, start talking to me, and they're gonna, she's making motions over here, they just make me laugh. They are going to choose a place for you. And you know what? Let's give them credit. They do a good job. These sons and daughters, they agonize. I have had I've had 2 days of daughters in my office crying. So it is an agonizing decision to try to find the perfect place. There's no perfect place. But they're trying to find the perfect place for mom and dad or mom. And so there's so much stress on that family, and then you've got the sibling rivalries, you've got all of this, they're arguing with each other. There's a lot of stress here. One sibling is with mom in the hospital, the other is talking to the social worker at the hospital saying, okay, you gotta go, you gotta get out of here, it's your hospital time's up, let's go. Some of you may have even been in that situation where they're pushing you out the door, and you're like, well, do I go to rehab? Okay, go to rehab, stay there for 20 days. Medicare pays for that. But I need more than 20 days. Medicare will pay for part of that. How do you know all this? I don't know. You have to learn about this. You have to talk to folks like us. And it's overwhelming. But we will walk you through that. So if you're that type of family that gets into a crunch and you need us, you call us and we will walk you through all those different steps. But that's the advice I would give is start educating yourself. But don't beat yourself up if you haven't done that and something happens tomorrow and you need us. We know how to handle the crisis moves as well. We can guide. I have guided so many people on go to rehab, stay in rehab for 20 days. If you have to stay for 30 days, that's great too. And then we can move you into assisted living. So that's the best advice I can think of at this moment. There's lots and lots of things to offer as advice, but that would be my number one.
Yeah, I think education and planning are key, which is why this
is what you do. What you do.
That's right. Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Until you learn it, and then not only do you need to know that, but everybody around you needs to know that. So pass the word on.
And you have to make sure that your siblings are all on the same page.
That's
This
right.
is not the time to discuss, this one has one opinion, that has another opinion. When mom falls,
Yeah, and I see that. I mean, I'm working with a lady right now that I went to sign a listing agreement on Monday, and she promised her son over the weekend not to sign anything. And he wants her in Minnesota, and another one wants her in West Virginia, and another
Oh
one,
my
yeah, he's
God.
talking about Arizona, and she doesn't want to be any of those places.
If you can be,
Yes.
if you can guide your children in a conversation, listen, no one wakes up and says, woohoo, let's talk about assisted living and memory care today. Look, I'd rather be talking about vacations and I mean, I love my job. Reporting, I love my job. But, there's certain topics you have to talk about because the siblings, you will see a whole different side of them. You may have already seen some of this if you've been in the hospital or been in a rehab situation. One wants to sell the house, the other does not want to sell the house. One wants mom in another state, the other does not. Every week, I am working through layers and layers of sibling situations. I moved a family in a few weeks ago. There were, I think, 4 siblings. 3 of them were out of state, actually. One was, the only one in North Carolina was here in Wake Forest. And it was challenging. It really was. I mean, we worked through it. We got it. We are on a good path. But it was a lot, and it was very stressful. There were lots of tears. There were lots of words, and there were just things that, just being honest, there were things that probably could have prevented some of this. But planning's the key. But just please have that conversation with your children.
Yeah.
Please.
Don't just plan it, but communicate that to your kids and let them know this is my plan.
Yes.
So that they understand that because they're going to weigh in with all of their opinions.
Yeah.
And part of that, honestly, is there's a portion of that. I remember having a conversation with my mom a few years ago, and I said, Mom, we've talked about it. We'd love to have you come live with us if and when. And I want you to know that invitation is there and it's sincere. And she said, well, thank you, and I'll think about it. And so when we revisited that, she said, and she named off all the reasons why it made sense for her to stay in the Midwest. And it was harder on me.
Yes, of course.
But the decision, she made the decision and I chose to respect that. And unfortunately, some children do not. And what they do is they get into badger mode. And it really becomes, and no offense, but for some kids, it's about them. It makes it easier for them. Right, and that I understand that because I lived that it wasn't easier for me. But in retrospect, I know that it was the right decision for my mother, and that's who that really should be about.
Right.
And so that's why you have to have that conversation. You write it down if you need to. Write them a letter, whatever it is, to communicate to the kids to let them know. I've thought about all the factors, and I need you to respect. This is my decision.
Yes. And even if you don't find an actual building that you want to move into, just name a few key people. This is my attorney that I've sat down and talked with. This is my realtor. I trust her to guide decisions even if I'm in the hospital. There are folks called geriatric care managers who will actually work with your family to guide you through some of that. Put my name down. I'm not going to force you to move into Cadence. I'd love for you to, but I'm not going to force you to do that. I'm going to just try to educate your family on what are the options for them. So think about if you have a son or daughter who's living in Florida, California, Missouri, wherever, they know nothing about this area. So if you're wanting to stay in this area, they don't know who to call. They don't even know about the senior center. They don't know any of this.
Right.
So you have to at least give them that little nugget of information. Put down the senior center. Tell them, call Jenny Griggs. Jenny will get you in touch with everybody.
That's true. She knows everybody.
She knows everybody.
And she's put most of it to work in some way or the other. So questions and answers. Who has some questions that you'd like to ask about what Tammy's been talking about today? I know we kind of smattered them throughout.
Yes, sir.
How do you evaluate any of the assisted living places? If you go on Medicare.gov, they'll give a rating, in which very few are rated really well.
Right.
So how do you get a warm feeling that any of these places are really where you want to be?
I am so glad you asked that, and sorry that we did not cover that. That's a great question to ask. I know. This is what I tell folks. When it comes to assisted living and memory care, okay, so let me pause for a second. I'm not talking about CCRCs, independent livings. Those are a ballgame all in themselves. I am just answering your question related to assisted living and memory care. Number one, what I tell families is all assisted livings and memory cares are going to offer 3 meals a day, 3 snacks. They're going to have some type of care team that's going to offer assistance with all of those ADLs that we were referring to. So then what makes each place different? Number one, that's where you have to go in and actually visit. The first thing that people do is they get a physical look at the building. Is it appealing? Does it smell like urine? You don't want to live there if it has a smell. You want to see what the physical layout is. So like at my building, because I can speak to that, we have the most beautiful courtyards and gardens. So if that's important for you, every time you walk out a door, you're going to see a courtyard area or a garden area. That's important to me. So I always point that out to families. We have a screened-in porch, for example. A lot of places don't have screened-in porches. So the physical layout of the building. Then you narrow it down to the type of room. So the 3 styles of rooms that I have are very different than the styles that Brookdale has, or Terabella, or Falls River. They're all different. So you have to go into that building and actually smell it, see it, touch it, and look at the actual rooms that are available. Then you're going to ask questions about the management team. How long has the management team been in place? This is a bragging point for Cadence. My executive director, his license hangs in our building. So when you're talking about the licensing of a building, that is Mark Foreman's license hanging in that building. Everything that happens in that building is on his shoulders. So you want to meet him or her. You want to meet the executive director. You want to meet with the nurse. You want to meet some of the care staff. If you go and visit a building and the only person you meet is someone like me, look, I love y'all, but I'm not doing the care. I can't do care, all right? You want to meet the people who are actually doing the care. So you want to see if there's a good feeling. Are the care staff neatly presented? I know that sounds judgmental, but I'm sorry, that's what I'm looking for. I want to make sure that they're neatly presented, that they're smiling, because then I know that that person's going to take care of my mom, just like they're taking care of themselves, but they're also happy in their job. We got the best compliment the other day. I was just like, yes. Somebody said, we chose your building because everybody seems happy and genuine. And that's what you want to feel. So you're looking for the physical part of the building, the rooms, the amenities, but but then you're also looking at the actual staff and the management team. All of us, all the buildings, memory care and assisted living, both, all of us are going to offer some type of activities throughout the day. Are they really implementing those activities? Or is it just on a calendar that's hung up on the bulletin board? You want to make sure that they're doing those activities. My mom was in a place where they always mailed me, she was out of town, they always mailed me the calendar. Yeah, they were doing those activities. So you want to make sure that they're actually implementing the activities. And you know what? It is okay if you see a really messy activities room. That means it's being used. If you see an exercise room where the chairs are everywhere and there's balls everywhere, you know, that means it's being used. So that's the kind of thing that you're looking for is, again, we all offer activities, but are they being implemented? And is it a variety of activities? You don't want to just see bingo. We love bingo. We love it. It is fun. We have a really cool way of playing bingo in my building, but not everybody wants to play bingo. You got to make sure that on the calendar you see a long list of a variety of different options. Meals. At the first visit, you probably don't need to taste the food because at the first visit, you're getting a bird's eye view. You know, you're trying to just see, okay, do I like the physical building? Do I get a warm, fuzzy feeling, as you mentioned? But then you want to come back and maybe taste the food. So when I give people the option to come back and taste the food, we do like a little buffet, like a little smorgasbord of everything that's available for like lunch that day. I'll give you a little sample of all of that just so you can get a variety. Keep in mind with food, I'll kind of go off for a second. Keep in mind with food, you're not going to like everything that's served every single day. If my building is serving Brussels sprouts and asparagus, I'm out of there. I'm not eating that. I don't care how great they say it is, I'm out. So you want to make sure that there's a variety of foods. And so like we have 2 entree choices, we have vegetable choices, or we call it side choices. So it might be mashed potatoes, it might be rice, it might be green beans, it might be that asparagus. I'm not going to choose that, I'm going to choose the green beans. So you are going to have a variety, but then you also want to taste the food and see, you know, if that is something that is flavorful for you. Keep in mind a lot of the assisted livings and memory cares do not cook with salt. So when you first taste something, you want to make sure that, you know, it does have spice in it, but not salt. And then you can add salt at the table if you need to. But when you first taste it and you're like, ugh, just keep in mind that that's because we don't cook with salt. Did that answer your question? Was that pretty good? And regarding the results that you'll see, depends on what you're looking for. So if you're looking at skilled nursing, make sure you're not looking at skilled nursing. Most of your skilled nursing places, their ratings are a little bit lower just because of the work that they're doing. It's skilled level services. So when you're looking at those ratings, make sure you're looking at assisted living and memory care. And if you go to a place and there was a comment made during the annual survey and it was written up in the annual survey, and you're like, you know what, I want to ask about that. Ask. If there's something on there, I remember years ago there was one of our annual surveys had a comment about medications. And there's a whole story behind that. Like, I'm not trying to hide anything from you. It was literally the doctor, not our doctor, but a doctor who was here in Wake Forest. I will never forget her. She did not send over the proper documentation for us to give medication, a certain medication to this family. The family blew up, they called the state, but it was the doctor who didn't send over. We requested it and they didn't send over. That's the other thing I'll share with you, is that sometimes when you read those stories, there's a situation that you need to hear further explanation about. And you can tell if they're telling you the truth or not. You know, you have your meter on. So you will be able to tell if they're telling you the truth. But read through those comments and then ask lots of questions. But there are sometimes our hands are tied because we have to follow state and county guidelines. And so it's a little more complicated than just what's written in black and white.
One other thing that I observed, when I tour a community that I haven't been to before, I always arrive early and I'll just say, oh gosh, traffic was better than I thought. And I want to sit in the lobby and I want to talk to the residents unannounced. And I usually will end up waiting on whomever it is, whether it's executive director or the sales director or whomever. But I want their real, I'm like, how do you like it here? So I ask those kinds of questions, and there's usually somebody sitting around somewhere. Now, you're gonna have one bragger in every group of people, so just know that. You've got to be able to take the good with the bad, but if you hear more good than bad, then that can help guide you along with all of the things that Tammy said. But I think that unannounced, impromptu, just asking those questions and getting to know people, that can help read a little bit of the atmosphere there as well.
If you're in the parking lot coming and going, ask a family member. Or ask if you see somebody, like at my building, if you see somebody in a red shirt, they're probably from Bayada, which is a therapy company. Ask them, hey, what's it like here? They'll tell you. Ask them in the parking lot. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Carol?
A couple of observations I've had when we've gone to visit a continuing care community. The second time we were there, I heard different things. So I don't go back that third time, because I'm sure. But among them was that somebody mentioned about the meal allowance. Well, $850 sounds great. And I said to myself, well, we don't spend that much going out to eat once a month. But when you break it down for two of us, it'd be $14 a day. Well, big deal. What are you going to get for $14? This just means you're going to get each breakfast. So it's thinking of that and then trickling it down into reality. The other thing was continuing care, which sounds the most appealing to us. So you have your apartment, but then you get moved to where you need more care. You were paying for your apartment and paying for that continuing care room. So that can add up real fast and drain your resources. So, going back more than once to me is.
Also, that's a great suggestion, going back even 2, 3, 4 times. Also, bringing someone with you, someone who's not maybe emotionally invested like you are, but someone who can ask some of the questions, well, what if this, and what if this, and what if this? So I have lots of tours where somebody will bring in a friend or another family member.
And to the point that Liz and Carol made about the meals, to me, I think you're better off to be a little low on the meal allowance, because you may go on vacation one month for 2 weeks and go stay with your kids somewhere, and you're not using the meals. So, it doesn't roll over. None of these places it will roll over. However, some places you ask the question, can I use that allowance on anything else in the building? So Searstone down in Cary, you can use your meal allowance for wine, and I believe also the salon there. Some places you can use the meal allowance money for the salon. So ask about that, because you can have not only your hair done, you could have a pedicure, manicure, whatever. And keep in mind that when you have that lower amount of meals, you're in independent or starting out in CCRC, a lot of the meals are pretty generous in size. So a lot of people like the fact that they only get 2 meals a day, or 1 meal a day, and that 1 meal can be 2 meals for them. Because they'll give you a take home just like at a restaurant, and you go put that into a full kitchen in your unit. So you put that in your fridge, and then you heat it up whenever you do want to eat. So there's some give and take there. When you have to think about what your habits would be. And so a lot of people do like the fact that there's only 1 or 2 meals offered per day. Okay. Other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way to evaluate the staff turnover at a facility? Because sometimes that will indicate the level of care.
You can definitely ask. If you were to ask me, if you were Cadence asking me, I would say, yep, we do have staff turnover, but this is the breakdown. So I'll start at the top. I'll talk about the management team. Mark's been there the entire time the building's been open, which is 10 years. I started there a couple of months after, and then I took a 2-year break. So I've been there for a total of 8 years. And so I will literally go down all the management team. The management team sets the tone of the building, so I always start there. But then you will hear me lift up my care staff. And if you don't hear that, walk away. I am indebted to the care staff. They are the core of the building. The management team may set the tone, but the care staff, they do that work. They run the building. So you are, like in any situation, here in my building, we have a core group that have been with us for, some have been 6, 7, 8, 9 years, believe it or not. Because what you hear out in the world is that there's so much turnover. So I've been in those buildings before I came to Cadence, and when I took my 2-year break, I was in a couple of buildings. I was a care manager, and so I was able to go into some of the buildings, and I saw a lot of the turnover. I've worked in a few buildings where there was one building I stayed for 4 months. I was out. It was terrible. So you have to go with that gut. You have to ask the questions about the turnover. So I would continue with this answer if you were in my building right now. We have our core staff that have been with us for years and years. I'll introduce you to some of them. I'll introduce you to Norma Jean and Dion and Crystal and Rebecca, some of those that have been there forever. And then I'm going to introduce you to some of the newer folks. We do all of our training at Cadence, so you want to ask about the training. Somebody can come in and ask for a job. They can have earned their CNA somewhere else, their Certified Nursing Assistants certification. They can have earned that somewhere else, but we're gonna continue that with our own training. And I'm going to tell you that we do not have a problem with dismissing folks. There will always be, in every community, there will be a few bad apples. So I want you to know that we will not tolerate that. We have certain reasons that we will escort someone off the building, off the campus immediately. And then we have other things that we will coach them on and redirect them and give them some of these folks are young. They're 20 years old, they're 22, and they're hard workers, but maybe they're not as polished as we would like. So we will coach them, but we usually give people about 3 chances. And if it's just not going to work for our building, then we part ways. And I will tell you, we don't have a problem with parting ways. And our corporate office is very supportive of that if we need to part ways. So that's another question you could ask is, how supportive is your corporate office?
Do you use agency nursing?
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. So that is another
I
thing.
had horrible experience with that. My husband ended up in, I think I would say her name, Zen nursing home.
Yeah.
He was there a week and I took him out on an 911 call. He was killed.
So
The
she's
nurse they
bringing.
assigned him that night was an agency nurse. She'd never been on it. She didn't know the patient.
Right.
It was just go. They moved him that afternoon. They didn't move his oxygen with him. If I hadn't gone back at the dinner hour to see how he was going to stay the night, he would have died by the next morning because he didn't have his oxygen. And I checked his oxygen and he was in his 70s. He was on his at a time. But anyway. And the agency nurse, she didn't know he needed oxygen. And when he had the emergency, when I went in there, she wasn't even in the building. She took her break and went outside to get some fresh air. And
So that is
an emergency oxygen tank in.
So that's what I do try to express is we don't use agency. Now, let's be realistic. Y'all know what happened in 2020, 2021. We did not have enough care staff. So even at my building, we didn't have COVID during 2020. We didn't get COVID until August of 2021. So we did great, but the care staff were not coming in. So we had to use agency. But that's where we were able to train our staff, and even if they're agency, they go through our training, orientation. So some places are forced to use agency, and you just have to ask that question and figure out what you're comfortable with. But at my community, we are not using agency. Now let's keep in mind. So I don't want to say anything negative about agency because there are some incredible agency companies out there. It's just like any job, there are some bad apples. And so just because a building is using agency, it's not the worst thing that can happen because there are some good agency companies, but you really do have to ask a lot of questions, like do they go through the orientation and so forth. But that is a plug. I do try to say we don't use agency, so I'm really glad you brought that up. Thank you. Sorry that happened with you.
Yeah, I had terrible experience.
Does she mean all agencies, or you're calling this one particular company.
So there's
agency.
different types of agents. So there are home care companies, and they are amazing. You stay at home for as long as you can. They will come into your home and they will provide care. And if you get with an amazing home care company with great caregivers, A+. That is awesome. We know some amazing companies. I refer to them every single week. They are wonderful. Some of those companies will staff in an assisted living or memory care community. Some, not all. Some will offer their employees over to an assisted living memory care place. They're not our employees. They are employees of the agency. Then there are freestanding agency companies that don't do in-home care, but they actually provide care for assisted living and memory care.
And that's what she was referring to.
Yeah, that's because the nurse is coming in for just 2 shifts. She's never worked there before. She doesn't know the patient.
Right.
And she's only filling in. And they had a really hard time staffing at that place because they had like maybe 2 nurses, nurses that worked there. And if they needed someone for just Friday night, they get someone in. She's never been there before. She's not coming back.
That's right.
She's only there for that night. And this woman happened to pull 2 shifts. She got there at 7, and she was staying till 7 the next morning. She didn't know, and the fact that she took her break and left the building because she needed fresh air was just crazy. But anyway.
So there are, I will say this, there are
And
horrible
And
things.
she didn't tell anyone she went out.
Right. So there are stories like this that are horrible. You hear them all the time. I can speak for the buildings I've worked in. That is not the norm. When you hear stories like this, you have to ask a lot more questions. That's why I'm glad you brought up the agency, that she was from agency, and, then we can talk about that there's not a continuation of care, there's not a knowledge of that person that she's getting ready to care for. So there's just layers and layers of things that go into, a story like this, and it's horrible. And, but you have to ask a lot of questions about, how that was handled, what happened. So, we all have a situation. We had a gentleman who fell. It was his first night with us, and it just rocked our world because it just really upset us that he fell. He was able to come back the next day, but it was very traumatic for us for a lot of different reasons. And state came in and surveyed us to make sure that we were doing what we needed to be, what needed to happen. And everything was fine, but it wasn't fine for that family. And so that's what you want to hear is, how did you respond to that? Well, how did the community respond? Because every single community is going to have something. We're not perfect. We're going to have something, but you just want to see how they respond.
Is that good? Yeah. All right. So if you have friends or family who need to hear this and we're not able to attend today, click on your phone. You can pull up your camera. You click on this QR code. It's also on some of the marketing materials. My newsletters over here on the table. My business card have the QR code. And you can go straight to my website and look for the Real Truth series. And you can watch all of the seminars there. All of the newsletters that I have every month are uploaded there as well. And so the newsletters look like this. If you're not receiving that and you would like to receive that each month, make sure you fill out your survey form and let me know that, and I'll be happy to add you to the mailing list. Each of you should have a postcard. It also has the QR code on the back. So this is the schedule for the rest of the year, the other seminars that we'll have here. And soon we'll have a library of, I'm actually starting to do video tours of senior communities, and I'm interviewing the sales staff, the residents there, and also doing a tour itself of the community. So I'll have a library of those videos up and running as soon as I can get all that cropped. There's a whole lot of yakety yak, and then you have to crop it all. So it takes a little bit, but and as Bob says, my neighbor Bob is my roadie, so he's the cameraman, and we're working through that. So there's the the postcard and all the dates. If you have the seminar survey filled out, I'd love to have that. And I would love for y'all to give a big round of applause to Tammy for all of her sharing. It's so great to meet you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming and such good questions. Hope to see you again next month.